Good evening. I'm Patrick Moore, and welcome to Louisville Late Night. This evening, we're in beautiful South Florida, and we're about to meet a very exciting, creative, and just an amazing individual, Jacque Fresco. Jacque Fresco, whose designs you're looking at, is a 98-year-old American self-educated structural designer, architectural designer, concept artist, educator, and futurist. Fresco writes and lectures his views of sustainable cities, energy efficiency, natural resource management, cybernetic technology, advanced automation, and the role of science in society. With his colleague, Roxanne Meadows, he is the founder and director of the Venus Project. Fresco promotes change to society through a global implementation of a socioeconomic system predicated on his views of social cooperation, technological automation, and scientific methodology, which he refers to as a resource-based economy. Fresco and his work has been the subject of radio and television programs, as well as newspaper and magazine articles, where he has been described as a dreamer, an eccentric, a utopian, an idealist, a crackpot, a charlatan, yet concurrently a genius, a prophet, and a visionary. Some feel that his ideas are impractical, idealistic, and borderline science fiction. One journalist labeled him as a cult leader due to his former figurehead status in the Zeitgeist Movement. Fresco dismisses these accusations. It's not every day that somebody comes along ambitious enough to offer a blueprint for redesigning the world. Exploring whether Fresco's ideology is utopian, Victor Vashchkan, the director of the Department of Sociology at the Moscow School of Social and Economic Sciences, claims that Fresco has carried forth a perspective that bypassed utopian perspectives of the 20th century. He describes the whole of Fresco's ideology as, quote, telling us about the deep past of the future, that in fact, the whole history of the 20th century is the history of death of utopia. This is, in fact, what gives Jacque Fresco such power. He jumped from the 19th century to the 21st century, leapfrogging the 20th century. It's a single step from Jules Verne to Jacque Fresco. This is a very powerful, and amazes me. When asked by Fox News reporter why he has such difficulty actualizing some of his ideas, Fresco responded, because I can't get to anybody. Yet the fact is that Fresco has gotten through to many people and is an amazingly productive individual. Whether the future Fresco envisions is probable or even possible is open to debate, but he succeeds in conveying the power of thinking of the future on a grander scale than we're used to. Fresco's work has been compared to that of Paulo Soleari and especially Buckminster Fuller, for all attempting to actualize their ideas against great odds, as well as Nikola Tesla, Thomas Edison, and Da Vinci, for sharing affluence and prolific innovation. Psychologist and engineer Jacques Fresco notes, contemplate the staggering realistic views of the future published by Jacque Fresco. There are many future, quote, geniuses, end quote, and self-styled seers in our midst who, upon careful examination, turn out to be disappointingly commercial and exploitative. Most extrapolations into the future are made from fixed and narrow points of view. We are all products of today's mediocrity breeding culture. But if anyone can be called a genius in our money system society, Jacque Fresco should be singled out as the broadest, most aware individual of our time. At Drexel University, sociologist and futurist Arthur B. Shostak often incorporated Fresco's ideas into his writings and teachings, stating, quote, "His contributions to futuristics is singular, as few, if any, around the globe dare the sweep, the depth, and drama of his vision. When he writes or speaks, futurists grow quiet, pensive, and finally appreciative, as his work is sound in its call for a thorough examination of the assumptions under which we labor. While little of his vision may materialize in the lifetime of us all, our grandchildren may yet salute much of what Jacque has helped them set in motion." In 2008, the Iranian movement gave Fresco their honorary guide award for dedicating, quote, "his life to the betterment of humanity as a whole." Fresco received the International Design Award in 2009, and in 2010 it was announced that Fresco was selected to receive the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Exemplar Zero Initiative in the summer of 2011. In April 2012, Fresco was honoree at Sustainatopia in Miami, Florida. Get ready to meet Jacque Fresco.
To talk to people. We really talk at people rather than to them, because it goes in their head and comes out in relation to their background. Now, if you don't understand what I'm saying, you're supposed to interrupt me. Raise your hand. So I'm going to say something now. If you were raised in the deep south, uneducated region, you might say, give me a nigger and kick his ass. Is that you speaking, or what you pick up from the environment? Okay. So I am strictly environmental. I think that every word we use, Mother gave us. Glass, table, light, papa, mama, all that was given us. We have no words of our own. In fact, there are people who don't believe we have free will. They feel that all your decisions are forced by movies, television, newspapers, whatever you look at. That shapes your values. We do not have our own values. If you were an Eskimo, if you say you can have anything you want, what do you want? He will never ask for a Mercedes, or a Rolls Royce, or an airplane, or a twin-engine Beechcraft. It's outside of the Eskimo's frame of reference. Do you understand? So anybody doesn't understand that. If you were raised as a baby by the headhunters of the Amazon, never saw anything else, you'd be a headhunter. And if he said you're bad, no, you're not. You're normal to that environment. You understand that? Okay. If you were raised in Saudi Arabia, it might be normal for some people to have 6 wives or 10 wives, depending on what you can afford. If you were raised there, that would be normal to you. When an American goes there, he says, "What's the matter with you people?" There's nothing wrong with anybody. It's just we try to impose our values on other people. When we say we don't like somebody, we don't like their values. They threaten us. All war is a racket, according to Smedley Butler. He's the most decorated American soldier. He's a colonel. And he wrote a book called War is a Racket. He said, if you can script the lives of people, if we can script your life, if you put your life up for this country, we should conscript all the war industries so no one makes a buck out of war. then it's real. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you put your life up for this country, I don't think anybody ought to make money selling machine guns, aircraft carriers, submarines to the armed forces. Then it's a business. Is there anybody that can understand? If you were brought up in Australia as a baby, you might say, "How are you, mate?" You understand what I mean? You have no your own speech. You pick up whatever you pick up from the environment. If you were brought up in France, you might say, "La Tour Eiffel," the Eiffel Tower. That's the way you'd say it. You wouldn't say the Eiffel Tower. So I'm saying that environment plays a major role on our values, our words, and the way we think. Is there anybody that doesn't understand that? All right. If you were brought up under Nazi Germany, after Hitler burned the books, as a baby, you'd be a Nazi. Because that's all you hear. Heil Hitler, Deutschland über alles, Germany above all. So, if you get mad at a Nazi, you don't understand. That's the way they were brought up. If you get mad at a member of the Ku Klux Klan, you don't understand. That's the way they were brought up. They're not good or bad. They're shaped that way by culture. Now you've been told there's good people and bad people. There's no such thing. There's different kinds of people, yes, due to their background. Now let's talk about the human mind. They tell you that there's such a thing as human nature. There's no such thing. Your nature is shaped by culture. For example, when I was 21, I wanted to know whether man's reaction to female is brought up or is it natural? Is he conditioned to that or is it natural? So I said, I don't know. So I went to the South Sea Island. This is many years ago. And when I got to a place called Tuamotu, I brought mirrors and beads, which I was going to give to the natives. To say, I didn't come to take anything away from you. I've come as a friend. But they were already in my hut, giving out my mirrors and beads to one another. They opened my suitcase, took all the mirrors and beads out, was giving to one another with a great big grin on their face. So I said, what's going on? They said, you have too many. I had a lot of mirrors and beads. But I didn't understand that until about 3 days later, the old folks pulled in a net full of fish, and they threw fish to anyone standing there. They didn't say, you owe me $10, you owe me $7. They just gave it away. Then I understood that. I didn't understand my mirrors and beads right away. And everybody walked around completely nude. The little children were swimming nude together with the boys and girls. And no male ever stared at a female body, only the eyes. Can you understand that? If you're brought up where children swim nude, boys and girls, there is no natural studying of the body. There are no fetishes and no peeping toms. Do you understand why? How can there be a peeping tom if everybody swims nude? And there are no fetishes. I want to make sure you understand me. So I treat the women the same as I treat men. There were no tit men, leg men, ass men, hair men. They just looked at the eyes of the girls when they talked to them. There was no, hey fellas, get a load of that chick. Nothing like that. And there was nobody that collected nude pictures of women. Can you understand that? If women walk around nude ever since they're tots, there is no such thing as a male looking at a female breast or hair or anything. They just talk to them like they talk to anybody else. I found out strange because I came from a world that was different. I didn't think they were wrong. I thought they were different. So If there's no such thing as right or wrong, which religion believes there is such a thing as right and wrong, good and bad. Now you're going to have to make up your mind. How many people here believe in God? Show of hands. Okay, a few, maybe 5 or 6. I'll see if I can clean that out. I don't know. First of all,
depends on what you mean by God.
it seems to me that man makes God in his own image. It seems to me that he put a guy up in the clouds and he made a man and a woman according to the book. And he told them not to eat of the fruit of the tree, certain fruit. But something unusual happened. He said, according to the Bible, snakes walked upright, like this, according to the Bible. And the snake said, eat of the fruit of knowledge, to Eve, and she did. And it said in the book that God is all-loving, all-knowing, that's what it said. And then he chased them out from heaven, because they ate of the fruit. Where's this all-loving person? And Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, when they crucify him. Just before the crucifixion, he looked up, he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. According to the Bible, God knows everything. You don't have to tell them, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. God goes, gee, I didn't know that. That's why the God in the Bible is very low grade. It seems more like man. He gets angry, creates floods. This isn't God. This is some man-made idiot. And man can't conceive of God. I ask people, there are people that come here that say, I've talked to God. I say, you have? What do you talk about? Well, the family. Do you ever ask them what makes heart disease, cancer, how to get rid of it? No. What the hell are you talking about here? And if you obey everything that Christ taught, you would live forever in heaven. Now let's examine that. Suppose you were 30,000 years old, because you live forever in heaven. You wouldn't want to talk to anybody anymore. You've heard it all. Think about what I'm saying. In heaven, if you're 50,000 years old, you wouldn't talk to anybody, because they couldn't say anything you haven't heard. Do you understand? The Bible's full of myths, and Moses raised a staff and the Red Sea parted. God could put the Jews on the other side without the Red Sea parting. Why the big show? I'm trying to tell you something. Whether I get to you or not, I don't know. But if you think about what I'm talking about, I'm telling you to be ruthlessly honest. That's the only way you can be. When somebody says, where did all this come from? Just say, I don't know. I really don't. If you lived across the way from me, and I see 10 guys coming out of your apartment, I can have my own opinion of what you do. But giving everybody a right to their own opinion is very dangerous. Because if somebody would ask me what you do, I don't know. She could be a language instructor, a ballet instructor, an art instructor. I don't know. That's the answer. I don't know. To think we'll ever get to the moon, I used to ask a lot of people that years ago. Not in 1,000 years. I said, have you studied rockets and space travel? No. Well, how do you formulate that? People have opinions about everything. Because everybody is brought up, I believe most of you are, to believe that everyone should have a right to their own opinion. Is that so? Weren't you brought up to believe that? That's very dangerous. It's easier to say, I don't know. Where did all this come from? I don't know. Is there a God? A lot of people say there is. I don't know. That's a true answer. I don't know where it all came from. Now, there's very few people that are that honest. That will tell you that. Politicians say things people like to hear. They have nothing to do with reality. we'll make more jobs. How can you make more jobs? If people don't have purchasing power, they can't buy things. So if they lose their jobs, their homes, and the automation takes over, they can't make jobs. They put in automation because it's cheaper. With machines making parts, you don't need lights, you don't need to heat the plant, you don't need parking space, and you don't need insurance for the health. So we're going to automate whether you like it or not. And the more they automate, the less money people will have. And that's the end of the money system. This system, no system can continue the way it is. It always changes. You can't design the best laptop. You can design the best laptop you know of up to now. But 2 years from now, it'll be smaller, lighter, faster, and do more. And 10 years from now, it'll be different. There are no final frontiers, no utopias. A lot of people think I'm a utopian. I don't believe in utopia. I think even the cities I design are the best I know of up to now. But next year, it'll be different. And 10 years from now, the kids of the future will design their own cities. Do you understand? You can't freeze anything and keep it that way forever. All things are subject to change. Is there anyone that doesn't understand what I'm saying? Any interruptions? Okay. Let's talk about people now. If you were raised by the headhunters of the Amazon, and I said to you, as a baby, so you never saw anything else. If I said to you, doesn't it bother you to have 5 shrunken heads? You might say, yes, my brother has 20. Are you bad? No. You're normal to that culture. I'm trying to do away with good and bad. When people say somebody's bad, what are they talking about? Are they different than you are? Do they ask different kinds of questions? What are they like? What is a bad person? Would you believe this? That every murderer, serial killer, every one of them is made that way by this culture. And that goes for all cultures. Germany, France, England, they're all corrupt, basically, as long as you use money. If you use money to get someone elected, if you put up more money for that person, you might get them elected. That is not a democracy. When you go to work for any company, the minute you punch that time clock, you're in a dictatorship. They don't say, what would you like to do? What are you interested in? Well, I like to work with old folks, or I will arrange that. No. You go to work and you drill holes for your service cars, or you put gasoline in cars. You do what they tell you to do. That's a dictatorship. All industry is a dictatorship, unless they ask you, what would you like to do? What are your real interests? Now, if you send a person to school and they have to pay $50,000 or $40,000 to become a doctor, it's not a democracy. It's only a democracy if everybody can pick whatever school they want to go to. Do you understand that? We've never had a democracy. There are people who say, give me the good old days. I'm sure you've heard that. In Salem, Massachusetts, they used to burn women alive who thought differently. They were called witches. How many of you knew that? How many of you knew that George Washington had 300 slaves? Did anybody know that? Very few people. If George Washington were alive today, we'd run out of town. How many of you knew that Harry Truman owned a hat store? He was a hat salesman. 2 people.
You taught me that.
What the hell's he doing as president? No matter what he knows about hats, it's not enough. And Oppenheimer went to see Harry Truman. He said, now that we gave you the atom bomb, would you do us a favor? He says, like what? Well, drop it off the coast of Japan about 30 miles and say, we have a terrible weapon. We'd rather not use it. Please surrender. Give them a chance. Truman said, I don't want those guys in my office anymore. and he forbid them from coming to his office. So Harry Truman was a jerk, and all your presidents were very stupid men, all the way back to the first one. I know you're brought up differently than the way I'm talking. Now, everybody in prison is made that way by the culture they live in. You say, well, what about free will? Can a man choose what he wants? No, he can't. He chooses what's within his background. In other words, if you ask a man, would you like 10 wives? Well, he'd feel embarrassed. He wouldn't even answer the question. In the Arab world, I said, yes, I would like 10 wives. Because man naturally wants more than one woman. You say man naturally, it's human nature. When I say there's no such thing as human nature, I mean if you're raised in Germany, you're going to say Heil Hitler if you never saw anything else. You're going to say Deutschland über alles, Germany above all, if you never heard anything else. So I'm saying your culture shapes your values. But you say, well, can a man surpass his culture? Yes, if you read books that are different than the books they recommend in school. The school books are all designed to control the way you think. Every newscast you listen to is not news, it's propaganda. It's propaganda that will not cause you to threaten this system. This system operates certain assumptions, and anybody that threatens those assumptions is a threat to the system. Communist, socialist, all that sort of thing. Some people say, well, is socio-cyberneering or is the Venus Project a form of communism? No. Communism has armies, navies, prisons, police, and money and banks and social stratification. We don't have any of that. We have nothing like that. We don't have a democracy because there's no such thing. In a democracy, everybody would participate. Is there anybody here that participated in voting for the space program? Not one hand. Did anybody here vote for the project to the moon, to send men to the moon? Nobody. Where do you participate? It's called a participatory democracy. People always ask me, if you install the Venus Project, would it be a participatory democracy? It's never a participatory democracy. Bridge engineers build bridges. Chemists make chemicals. The pharmacists carry out prescriptions. No matter what a chemist writes, anywhere in the world, they understand it. It's not subject to interpretation. When you read the Bible, it's a book. Somebody says, this is what Jesus meant. Oh no, he meant that. Third person says, you're both wrong. This is what he really meant. So you have the Lutheran, the Seventh-day Adventist, the Catholic, all these different denominations because it's subject to interpretation. Whenever you talk to somebody, they do not hear exactly what you say. It comes out in terms of their background. Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't want it to be that way. I wish when people talk to each other, they'd understand each other exactly. And that only happens in science. If a chemist talks to another chemist, they know exactly what he means. When a bridge engineer talks to another bridge engineer about the size of the beams and the alloys that it's made of, he gives you everything about it. He doesn't say, believe me, this is strong. He gives you the torsional strength, the tensile strength, the compression strength on paper. He says, that's what it is. Now, how many of you here know about the memory metals? Metals with a memory. 1, 2, 3 hands.
From you.
I might as well show it to you. This is a memory metal. It's nickel and titanium mixed together. A 50-50 mixture. And if you shape it this way, that's the shape it remembers. If you spell out Jesus Christ with a wire and pull it straight and You sit on the chair and work a switch to turn on a heater, that Jesus Christ will go back to Jesus Christ. This has a memory. It'll remember this shape, or any shape it's made in. Now that's hard to believe, so I'm going to destroy the shape so you can see it back there as much as I can. I'm going to twist it, squeeze it, and do whatever I can do to try to make it look different than what you first saw. Now that doesn't look like it looked before. May I have a hairdryer?
I don't know if I have a cord runner. Jacque, can you pull forward a little bit? Can you pull forward a little bit?
Yes.
There's your,
I'm going to twist it a little more. Twisting it is trying to destroy the shape that I showed you before. It's the same thing. It's not a trick. The metal has a memory, but it'll remember any shape you make it in. If you made furniture that was bodily contoured, and you ship it holistically like that, it's hard to pack them in. But if you flatten it out and ship 1,000 chairs flat to China, when it gets there, you use heat. It takes a minute and a half, all the chairs go back to the shape you made it. That goes for a building too. If you use scraps of this material, mix it in with a concrete, not concrete, but a rubbery type material, and then flatten it out so it's a disc, if it's a dome, and then heat it, it'll go back to a dome shape. Anything that you make this in. Is there anybody that doesn't understand that? Is there anybody that didn't see that? Okay. And so there are a lot of new materials. I sent the government pictures of ways of dealing with problems. If you made a shelter like this against hurricanes and tornadoes, no hurricane can suck the roof off. It'll whirl around it. And there's a turbine on top. So the hurricane wind turns the turbine. That keeps the electric lights going and the food in your refrigerator. If you have a bad hurricane, you might have a power outage for 10 days or so. They'll spoil all the food. If they really cared about people, there'd be a place to go. You haven't a place to go. I remember the government telling people to get off Key Biscayne. There's a terrible hurricane coming. And they all got in their cars and they headed out. So I stopped the car and said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I don't know, but I'm getting the hell out of here. There should be a place to go." You understand? Fine. There's such a thing today as new information. And we don't have access to that information, so I'll just take a book, The World According to, well, we don't need that.
Hey, Jacque,
Okay. Yes.
this design right here, has that been tested against hurricane winds?
That's what?
Has it been tested?
Yes.
Yes? What kind of winds? What was the wind?
300 miles an hour.
300 miles an hour, and it just stayed the same shape? Nothing?
Same thing. The windows are just like airplane windows. Airplanes fly at 600 miles an hour.
Yeah. What's the core made of?
Yes.
What is the core made of? That just looks like it's a...
The core is made of a vinyl. The core is made of strands of memory material. They now have a non-metallic memory, where the doctor uses suture material, and he ties a surgical knot. Then he straightens it out, and he cuts the skin, and he sticks it through. And the heat of the body causes to tie a surgical knot. Can you understand that? Mm-hmm. Or however you shape it. So if this is lettering, and you take this gadget called a light pipe, it's been dropped many times. It will take this information and pull it to the end. I don't know if you can see it. Do you see it back there?
Yes. What is it? Oh.
And take this lettering and bring it to me, even though it's cracked. Can you see it? Is there anybody here that wears eyeglasses? I see a person. May I have them? And yours? These eyeglasses are prescription? Are they prescription?
They're not prescription, they're just
Yeah, they're
correction, yeah, it's for reading.
The lenses are perfect, but when you put them in a frame like this, the frame squeezes on the glass and distorts it, and we can't see that. Joel, here, Roxy, would you mind demonstrating the frame effect on the glass?
You want to describe this first, the use of the light pipe?
I will. You have to look through that gadget.
Yeah, this is polarizing light. It shows the stresses of the frame on the glass. The black area.
Is it visible?
I can't really see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to reach.
It's pretty good, actually.
Get another
You can see
corner.
it in the corners.
Can I look up?
You have to get somebody with prescription.
Are those prescription?
I can't.
Prescription ones are always bad.
You can see where the frame presses on the glass. If anybody else has any eyeglasses,
So frameless is better if it doesn't have a frame?
only where the frame comes to the glass do you see the press.
I changed it a bit. I don't know if you can see that.
Big up.
You look through the window.
I wonder if these are bad. so I
You
changed
can
the
get up from
color.
your chair and look at it and make sure.
These are prescription.
That's something to relate to.
Only they belong to a club, higher consciousness. I'm sure you've heard that. Man having higher consciousness. Man cannot have higher consciousness than his receptors. I think you all know that there are radio waves moving through here. We can't see them.
That's back behind you.
So how can you have higher consciousness than your receptors? There are craters on the moon. It takes a telescope to see them. It takes a microscope to see bacteria. So if a man claims to have higher consciousness, how can he have higher consciousness than his receptors? You know what I'm talking about? Yes.
But doesn't that go back to feeling? To feeling?
Right.
There's a big roll loud, he can't hear you.
Doesn't that go back to feeling? You don't necessarily need to see, but you feel.
She said, doesn't that go back to feeling? You don't necessarily need to see, but you can feel.
Okay. A doctor came here and he said, we have eyes to see with. I think you've all been taught that. So I said, you really believe that, don't you? He says, yes, I do. So I took him into a dark room and said, see. He said, you have to turn a light on.
She's talking about feelings.
I
Doesn't it go
know.
back to feelings?
I know
Okay.
that. So you can't see with your eyes. You need light to see. They think we have ears to hear with. If there was no air, you wouldn't hear anything. Sound is conducted by air. They say your taste buds on your tongue are little grooves like that. And the tongue, when you eat bacon and eggs, it falls in that groove, and there's a nerve on the bottom that's titillated. If we can make a recording of that and play it back into the tongue, you can taste bacon and eggs. Do you understand what I'm saying? You take a finger and you stick it in the cold water. The nerve endings transmit the cold to the brain. The amount of transmission, if it's 80,000 cycles a second, if you can play that into the nerve ending, you can play cold water into the finger, or hot water. The same nerve endings can transmit hot water. If you touch a balloon, it yields with this finger. Same finger. The nerve endings transmit contact, pressure, texture to the brain. And we call that awareness. We call that consciousness.
Is Jacque question?
Man is only conscious, again, as his receptors. If you wear a certain type of lenses, you might be able to see bugs that you couldn't see ordinarily. Yes.
Are you saying that we can only know the things that we can sense? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Well, you know, I don't agree. I mean, I think we can sense things that we can't even see.
He says, I think we can sense things that we can't even see. That's all I need to know.
Like one. Give me an example.
All right. And in conversation, people talk to me and they just give me the smallest amount of information, and yet I can see the whole picture of what's involved, what they're talking about. It comes to me in pictures, and it's information that they haven't.
If I showed you a Volkswagen, you can draw it?
Yeah.
No, this is.
Can
What's
you
that?
draw what you imagine to prove to me that you can see?
Draw cutaway views of the engine.
How can I say this?
Twice as loud as you.
Okay, if in some people giving me information and I can see more information about it, I just give it back to them. I say, this is what I see.
Yeah.
And the people
But do you think
confirm.
people comprehend exactly what the person's talking about?
I believe
Or
so.
close?
Or close, yes, or close.
All right, I'll buy that.
Yeah.
They can, to a certain extent, visualize, but they cannot do it exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I'm talking about. When engineers talk to each other, especially aeronautical engineers, they understand each other. They don't say, I think he means this, like they read the Bible, or I think he means that. I think they don't fully understand. So when they deliver a blueprint, when an engineer submits a blueprint to another engineer, he understands exactly what he means. Otherwise, you couldn't build bridges, or airplanes, or buildings, or anything.
Well, yeah, again, I'm an engineer who builds bridges, okay? And when we get a set of plans, we do stand there and say, I think he means us to do this, because the plans are not perfect.
Well,
We have
as
to
far as
interpret.
I know, you can't get out of school unless you learn how to read blueprints correctly.
Well, there's no perfect set of blueprints.
Let's say that,
He said there's no perfect set of blueprints.
no, but they're better than no blueprint.
Right.
They give you some idea. Okay. Men build, if you send the blueprint of an automobile to China or Japan, they turn out the same car. Very close. Very close approximately. Without a blueprint, they can't turn it out. They say, have you got any prints? And there's a guy called a metallurgist in Sweden. He mixes different metals together to see if he can make it stronger, hard to bend. So when he mixed nickel and titanium together, 50-50 each, he bent it like the letter U, and he put it on his desk. And he had a heat lamp nearby. He didn't know that. But the heat lamp heated it, and it straightened itself out again. So he said, gee, this metal has memory. He didn't sit down and say, I got to invent memory. Nobody can invent anything. I'm going to try to prove it to you. So don't get mad at me. Listen. Nobody ever invented the wheel. They said, the guy that invented the wheel, no, they said the guy, could have been a girl too. The guy that invented the wheel He started the industry going, automobiles, everything else. But there's a scientist that said that he doesn't think anybody invented the wheel. He thinks a tree fell over another tree. When you pulled it, the bottom one rolled. Like this, if you don't understand me. And that's where the idea of the wheel came from. If there was one stone in the way, anywhere along here, it would stop rolling. So they shaved the bark off the middle and made it thinner. And that's where the wheel came from. Nobody can sit down and say, gotta make a wheel. The brain can't do that. It has to see something. You say, well, didn't Tesla invent the wireless? That's what it says in the book. But let's think about it. Can Tesla say, I gotta make a wireless? How do you do that? He must have seen something, and here's what he saw. If you bought wire from an electric company, just a spool of it, if you run an electric current through the spool of wire, just to see if it's not broken, that's why you run. If there's a coil nearby, it will induce a current in that coil, even though it's not connected. How many of you knew that? Okay. So that's where Tesla got the wireless from. He didn't say, I gotta make a wireless. And somebody says, Edison invented the electric light. He can't. Nobody can. But Edison did want to know what different metals, how they would conduct electricity. So he connected them to a battery and he ran a current through different metals. Some metals of a different density would offer more resistance to the current. And it would glow red hot. He said, G, the source of light. And he bent it like the letter U. And he had a light source. It wasn't white, it was kind of red-orange. And he put it on the table, it fell over and burned some of his papers. And he said he took a drinking glass and put it over it. And there was the electric light. He didn't sit down and say, make electric light. They always tell you people invent things. Not true. They never invent anything at all. They always pick up something from nature. Let me see if I can help you with that. Some man was watching a bird fly. So he made two wings. He put his arms into the wing and he jumped off a building, a small building first, and broke his knee. And he couldn't go on with that. Another man did. He jumped off the top of the Eiffel Tower, beating the wings, and he died. And his cousin wrote, make wings larger next time. There's no way to know how big to make wings if you're building the first airplane. There's no way to know how big to make a propeller. You make it as big as you can know. So no one ever makes a mistake. They do what they know. They tell you they made a mistake, or this person made a mistake. No one ever makes a mistake. When a child doesn't know how to solve a problem, he says, I want the candy. And Dad gets so annoyed by that, he buys him the candy. If he's a dumb dad. If a child makes a lot of noise and you go into the bedroom, they take a high noise level to bring you into the bedroom. Whenever there's a high noise level, unless it's an accident, you know the kid's hurt. You can tell by the sound. You go into the bedroom. If you go in only on high noise level, the child becomes a high noise level child. Like, I never taught my children how to read, but I used to read to them. What did I read? About dinosaurs. That's what the kid was into. He was 4 years old, and I read about dinosaurs. So I said, when the brontosaurus met the triceratops, there's a certain type of dinosaur. And I go, oh, and I closed the book. He says, Daddy, what happened when they met? I says, if you learn to read, you can find out yourself. Give children a reason to want to read. Don't teach them to read. Don't teach them 2 and 2 is 4. 4 and 4 is 8. 8 and 8 is 16. That isn't good for the mind. But if you give them a reason to want to learn mathematics, a reason to want to learn chemistry, they can control things. So they want to know. And we don't know how to educate kids today. We give them grades. If you get a higher mark than your sister, that develops jealousy. That's where it comes from. People are not born jealous. They're not born greedy. They say that's human nature. No, it's not. They learn to be greedy in a greedy society. They learn not to share ideas. It's the sharing of ideas that make airplanes available all over the world. It's the sharing of ideas that enables us to grow. If we keep things to ourselves, that's where it'll remain in your own head. And if you take out a patent, you prevent other people from using it. So patents prevent other people from using good ideas. So in the future, there'll be no money in society. Because money, you can pay off a senator, a judge, anybody. Or you can pay for an election. You can put up $4 million and help him get elected. But that isn't a democracy. You understand? Okay. So we have a lot of things wrong with our society. Now let's say you work for me in my department store. And a woman said, "How much is that lamp?" And you said, "It's $9. He says, "I'll take 2. But you being a good person, you say if you go 3 stores down, you get the same lamp for $7. You wouldn't be working for me very long. You understand? So you have to be a little bit of a son of a bitch to make it in this society. Now what the hell's a beauty contest? There's no such thing as beauty. If everybody had a pointed head, you'd have surgery done. If everybody had a nose a foot long, you'd have surgery done. You know what I mean? To add to your nose, because people run down the street and say, "Look at that funny nose." But society sets up standards of beauty, ugliness. There's no such thing. If you marry a very handsome guy, it turns out to be a mean son of a bitch. That face becomes ugly to you. Do you understand? Now, if a girl was born with a moldable face, and 4 years straightening out everything, I can see giving her a little medal. But if she's born beautiful or born with slim features, why give her credit for it? If a person brought up to be a serial killer, why put him in jail? It's to get rid of the conditions that produce a serial killer. So a guy named Albert Fish, this was years ago, you might remember it, they believe he ate 45 children, and the public wanted to burn them alive, just like they burned witches in Salem. Because they're women who thought differently than other women, but they were called witches. Here's what you didn't know. For every witch you found, you inherited their land and their bank account. Did you know that? So it was good hunting witches in the old days. They say, give me the good old days. In the good old days, there was child labor in factories. They worked Saturday, Sunday, all the time. And there was slavery in the good old days. So there never was any good old days. These are words that people use. You're not born hating blacks, Filipinos, Jews, or Swedes. You learn that in the environment you live in. If a man is prejudiced against blacks, he's been programmed that way by his group, the group that he's associated with. So I said to myself years ago, when I was 21, I said, Jacque, how are you going to change the world? There's so many different customs, different values, different belief systems. So I said, why don't you test your system? I said, how do you do that? I'm talking to myself. Thinking is talking to yourself. So if I say, I'll see you Saturday, he says, I have to take the kids in mini Saturday. He says, no, I can't see him. Talks to himself. Everybody talks to themselves. It's not unusual. So what we wanted to do is change the Klan. So this guy in charge of the Klan had a war surplus store. You know what that is? Where you sell government equipment. And I used to buy a lot of magnifying glasses from him. He said, what do you do with the lenses you buy from me? as I make different optical devices. He said, I'd be very curious, and I come to your lab to see it. I said, any time, but call me first, just to make sure. And he called, and he came to my lab, and when I told him about the memory metal, he said, that's not possible. So I showed it to him. He says, I was wrong. I said, good, as long as you know you were wrong. Now, he said to me, would you mind coming to a clan meeting and telling them how you think? Because you think so differently than the average person. I said, Lou, if I did that, they wouldn't listen to me. He says, I'm in charge. I'll get him to listen to you. That's what I needed. Never confront people with logic or reason. It doesn't work. So I did something that surprised the hell out of Lou. I had my little girl hold a cigarette in her mouth, and I cut it with a razor blade and put a hairpin in the cigarette. When I fired the gun, she rolled her lips, and that turned the cigarette around, and the hairpin blew it back all over the place. And the guy said, you're the best shot I ever saw. It was fake. It wasn't real. It impressed him, though. So will you come to a clan meeting and talk to our boys? I said, Lou, if I did, they wouldn't listen to me. So I'll get them to listen to you. I'm in charge. That's what I needed. So Lou did that. And Lou said to me, you know, I have some natural abilities. I said, like what? He said, I can look at a photograph of a person and tell you all about him. I said, if you can do that, Lou, the hell with science. I said, when do you want to demonstrate that? He said, the next time there's a clan meeting. So I went to the clan meeting, and Lou, I projected a photograph on the wall. He said, it looks like a good man, a Christian, a war veteran, a hard-working man, a good man. And after he got through talking about him, he was projecting his own values into this picture. I pulled out the bottom of the picture, which I got in the post office, wanted by the FBI for subversive material. And they were laughing at Lou for the first time. Lou used to say a lot of things, but he never backed them up. This time, I checked it out, didn't work. So when they started laughing at Lou, I said, you guys shut up, don't laugh at Lou. Maybe he made a mistake this time, but maybe he really knows. So he said to me, thanks. You know, I had to defend Lou because I was working on it. So what I did with Lou, I said, Lou, see if you can guess the next one. I played a record. There's a guy talking about aeronautics with an Oxford accent. So he says, well, I picture a skinny Englishman with a bald head and thick eyeglasses. And he went on projecting his own values. And then the image comes on later. It's a black guy raised in England. It's a goddamn nigger talking like an Englishman. How come? I said, because he was raised in England. If he was raised in Germany, he talked like a German. He says, you mean to say, is what he said. These are his words, not mine. A nigger behaves like a nigger because he's born a nigger. I said, no. If I took your baby and brought it up with a black family, he said, that's right, you're right, the way blacks talk years ago. He says, you really think that the black man is raised by other black men, and that's why they speak that way? I said, look, if you were brought up in Boston, you'd speak differently than people in California. If you're brought up in the South, you speak differently. And I can't say to you, stop speaking with a Southern accent. Stop. And you can't stop. It's the only accent you know of. Do you see what I mean? So I had an interesting experience. I went back to New York and I asked some questions. I said, who do you think are the most backward people in the New York area? A lot of people came up and they said, the Arabs that live on Atlantic Avenue, not all Arabs, but some that live on Atlantic Avenue. So what makes you think they're backward? They still believe the earth is flat. So I said, boy, I'm going to try to change them. Now, if I can't change them, I can't change the world. You understand? So I called up the guy in charge. Never speak to the group, always the person in charge. I called him up and said, can I come and talk to you? He said, his name was Elbaz. He was an Arab. First thing he said to me is, you are an Arab? That's the way he spoke. And I can imitate him pretty much. I said, yes, I am an Arab. I'm not an Arab. But I said that to win his approval. He says, where your father he born? I said, Lebanon. Very good, come and saw me. He means come and see me. So I came to see him. He said to me, you believe the world he round? That's the way he spoke. I said, yes. He went, where he comes from, that's impossible. That's what that means. Can't accept it. That's what the word bullshit means. When a person says bullshit, he's saying, I can't accept what you're saying. It has nothing to do with the shit of a bull. You gotta be honest and understand what I'm saying. Maybe, I don't know you, if you bake a pie and drop it, you might say fiddly-dee. He might say shit. That means, I'm sorry I dropped the pie. There's nothing to do with shit. Do you understand that? Okay. So people use different words. In this society says, this is a good word, that's a bad word. You don't use that word. Who the hell has the right to tell you what word to use? See? So you live in a world that's fixed. It has fixed notions of right, wrong, good, bad. If you go out with a child that's not of your type, and your mother says you're a Lutheran, you don't play with that little Catholic boy. Your mother means well, but she's doing damage. Parents mean well in most instances.